So good evening to all of you and a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I'm Dr. Priya Nagraj and I'm the CEO of Pune Knowledge Cluster. Pune Knowledge Cluster is an organization established by the Office of the PSA. We are located in Pune, where we are hosted by the Inter-University Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics, which is a UGC-supported organization. To learn more about what we do, please visit our website. We do a lot of citizen engagement and community-driven programs in the science and technology space, amongst other initiatives. And as part of this initiative, specifically, which is our Health Talk series, I'm very happy to have Mr. Neeraj Jain, who is the country director of PATH India and the director of PATH South Asia, here with us today. The series that we do aims at promoting active discussions on mapping, tracking, mitigating, and diagnosing diseases at a city level. The aim is also to showcase novel research, clinical and technological advances in the healthcare ecosystem. This also aligns very well with what we have been doing over the last 2 years in the space of health. Coming to our speaker today, Mr. Jain is associated with PATH. PATH is an international not-for-profit global health organization which focuses on vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, devices, system and service innovations. Mr. Jain has over 30 years of extensive leadership experience in strengthening organizations. His current focus at PATH is to partner with government for strengthening health systems, especially primary healthcare, and mobilize PATH's technical assistance on ground operations for the same. He's also a member of several advisory boards of organizations working in the development sector like Water for People, Digital Green, Social Alpha, and Arogya World. As part of his talk today, Mr. Jain will tell us about the initiatives at PATH where they design and test robust, easy-to-use and purpose-built diagnostic tools in the lab and on field, and advocate policies that make new diagnostic technologies sustainable around the world. Thank you very much again, Mr. Jain, for taking the time to be here with us today, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Priya, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and a very good afternoon to all of you. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you, and I'll share some thoughts in terms of what's happening, not just about PATH's work, but really what's happening in the ecosystem, which may give you some ideas, may tickle your creativity, and also get you involved with some of this important work that's happening across the country now. I'm just going to share my screen if you'll give me a second, and I'm hoping that it works. Are you able to see my screen, Priya? Maybe you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm just gonna, yep. Great. So, sorry. So I'm going to talk about the future of diagnostics. And I think this is an extremely important subject because the health of our population will depend on better diagnosis. Since PATH works on health equity, so it's got to be scalable, it's got to be affordable, it's got to be appropriate. And of course, we want the best quality despite the fact that it is affordable, etc. We also believe that technology is going to be critical to get us there. So there's a lot of high-tech enablement of diagnostics, as well as screening tools where you could do population-level screening, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, which would give you some idea about what's going on out there. Sorry, yeah, there we go. I'm still getting a hang of how to operate on Zoom. I know you must be wondering, you've been on Zoom probably for the last 2 years, but I still get lost at times. So apologies for that. Coming to the role of diagnostics, and diagnostics plays an extremely important role because quality and timely diagnostics will actually be the biggest enabler of health for all. And when I talk about health for all, I'm really thinking about equity. I'm thinking about the slum worker in Dharavi. I'm thinking about a small village in UP or the far-flung areas of Arunachal. And how are we going to get quality diagnostics in those areas? It's also very clear that diagnostics plays an important role in terms of reducing out-of-pocket spending if we are able to provide them at an affordable cost, and also improved health outcomes. So if we want to get to universal health coverage, and for some of you who may not know, Universal Health Coverage Day is on this weekend, and we are really, India is focusing on universal health coverage going forward. So stronger primary health care, stronger diagnostics, which will take us to universal health care. Diagnostics are also very important for tracking disease epidemiology and also for detection of outbreaks. And we've seen the largest outbreak of our time with COVID, and we've seen what happened during that time. And we've all seen how diagnostics really evolved in India across the world. But just coming back to India, we have done a fantastic job of diagnostics in India. We've built our RT-PCR capacity. We've built also a lot of capacity on self-testing. And I'm sure many of you would have gone through that process of self-testing. I have for sure. And additionally, going into genome sequencing, where we're really trying to get into the details of the virus and how it's changing as we move along. So this is going to be absolutely essential as we look at data on outbreaks, data on health, population level health. Another important area is disease surveillance. So knowing where we are going with any disease, is it increasing, is it decreasing? And without good diagnostic, which we had during COVID, we would have actually not known where it's going, when are the numbers going up, when are the numbers going down, and how does that data actually flow into the whole system? I think that's going to be absolutely critical. Now let's look at some of the gaps. And the biggest gap for us is the fact that we do not have human resources right at the front line. We don't have trained human resources who can actually do diagnosis. So lack of appropriate tools is an important one. The infrastructure, we don't have. If you go to a health and wellness center, and if you were a live audience, I would have asked you to sort of raise your hands, but I'm presuming that many of you would have never been to a primary health center to get services. You may have gone there to learn about primary health care, but we don't really go there because there aren't many diagnostic facilities that are available there. There's a lack of access in those point of care situations, and the costs are pretty high. Of course, we saw that with RT-PCR. When we started with COVID, we were at about 3,000 rupees. We managed to bring it down, and today it's at 300, and there aren't many takers because not many of us are testing for COVID anymore, thankfully, because of high vaccination. Finally, health policies that we have are not focused around diagnostics. The focus has been on really around providing therapeutics, providing care after you're sick, rather than saying, okay, can we diagnose early and try and prevent as much as possible in terms of the disease. So that's another area which is extremely sort of important. Coming to the gaps, and I think this data point and these slides, Priya, you're most welcome to share it with the group that is out there.
Sure.
These are public, these are open source files, so please go ahead and share.
Yeah.
But just sort of focusing on that, we have a huge gap in the diagnostics availability for patient care. So if you look at just some of these numbers, and they're pretty strong, and this includes diagnostics in developed countries. So 47% of the global population actually does not have access to appropriate diagnostics. And in primary healthcare settings in low and middle income countries like India, only 19% of the population have access. More importantly, 1.1 million annual deaths can be prevented just by closing the diagnostic gap. So huge numbers there, huge impact possibility. And so the importance of diagnostics cannot be ignored is really the point I'm trying to drive home here. Extremely critical for us to remember. Now I'll talk a little bit about PATH's diagnostic program. So PATH actually supports diagnostic value chain right from technology development and innovation, both system innovation as well as product innovation. So new products and how would they fit into the system. And we work across all disease areas, right from infectious diseases covering TB, HIV, COVID, of course, etc., all the vector-borne diseases, and also moving to maternal health, child health, etc. So really covering the entire gamut. Now, currently, our focus is on AMR, antimicrobial resistance, which is a silent killer and a huge challenge in India at the moment because of the way we use antibiotics. And that's something that we need to really think about. But also, we need to have better diagnostics. Are we actually diagnosing resistance to antimicrobial resistance? Are we actually diagnosing that? Are we actually working around that? And are we having the right therapeutic when we need it? Because if you have resistance, you could be on an antibiotic treatment without any benefit. Our vision is, our vision mission is that we want to increase the availability and scalability. Scale is critical. You know, we have 1.4 billion people. So you can't have a diagnostic which is available to only a few. So how do we look at scalability and availability of affordable, appropriate, very important, because diagnostics can change based on regions and based on countries, etc. And good quality. I think one of the things, the basic framework of universal health coverage is that everybody should have access to good quality to be able to actually achieve overall health impact. Very interesting also, just to mention, during COVID, we realized that it was not just about the urban rich or the urban middle class, because we were all in the same boat, right? So health equity came to the forefront. And good quality diagnostics for everyone, whether they can afford it or not, is going to be absolutely critical. Some of the supply side work that PATH does is really around advancing R&D. So a lot of work happening around R&D, around enabling access, because we need to get access all the way down to that village that I talked about in Arunachal. So, for example, we are actually currently testing drones in Arunachal to see whether we can get samples through drones flown in for areas which are very, very difficult to reach, requiring 2 days of walk before you can get there. So while we are looking at vaccines going in, blood samples, etc., coming out, or sputum samples coming out to be able to diagnose well. It's also about ensuring quality. So that's extremely critical. And on the demand side, we need to strengthen our systems. We need to also align with the end user. Is this appropriate for the end user? And do we need to make any changes there? And finally, we need to be able to support the entire system to deliver, to be able to get scalability. And as you can see, at the center of it all is health impact. And that's really what the focus needs to be for our country and for all low and middle income countries. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to focus on people who can't afford rather than people who can, because people who can afford are getting whatever they need. The diagnostic challenge is going to be more in the people who can't afford it. In terms of where we work, so that's the world map for you right there. PATH is headquartered out of Seattle. I'm responsible for South Asia. And as you can see, the kind of diagnostic work that we do, of course, COVID-19, we were thick in the middle of it. Malaria, we do a lot of work around malaria diagnostic, maternal health, child health, neglected tropical diseases, polio, which is still sort of just left in terms of being completely eliminated from the world. Tuberculosis, a lot of work happening around there as we move towards elimination, and typhoid. So this is some of our global reach of our programs, and gives you an idea of the way that PATH is actually operating. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that PATH has worked on, and some of these we worked on right from the lab onwards. Some, of course, have been more sort of later stage entry for PATH. But if you just go from 2016, from filariasis, which is a vector-borne disease, to looking at many, antibodies, etc., for malaria. We've done a malaria ultrasensitive point-of-care test, G6PD testing for malarial antimalarials. We've done urine tests for PRCR, and so on. So if you just go through that whole continuum, you'll see that there have been a lot of interesting developments that have come out of PATH's system. And those are, a lot of them have been, most of them actually have been scaled up and are being used for multiple areas of diagnosis. So coming to improving diagnostic accessibility in India, and I'll talk a little bit about what we call the Impact Lab, and which is really talking about product innovation. So PATH actually develops its own products and innovations with partners, with innovators across the country, and look at research and design, look at developing and validating, and that validating includes clinical validation as well as operational validation, because you could clinically validate, but if it's not going to come into the public health system, the impact could not be very high. We also help to approve and recommend to the government what they could be focusing on. And also, finally, our teams on the ground really help to introduce and optimize, scale up and apply some of these products on the ground. We don't necessarily do everything from scratch. We work many a time with innovators who've already got a certain product at a certain level and look at how these could be rolled out in the next, in the few years to come. But our focus is on impact. So really the focus being, how are we going to get large-scale impact through better diagnostics? So, if you look at this whole value chain, the journey from of innovation going all the way from research to developing, validating, as I talked about, approving, recommending, and advocating the solution with the government, because all innovations are always looked at with suspicion. So government needs valid data. They need validation in terms of sometimes in terms of impact, sometimes in terms of cost. So we do health economic studies, etc., looking at what could be introduced, what could not be, what is the competitive product. The good thing is that we are focused on scale and impact. So we are not actually wedded to one product or the other. We are looking across the continuum and looking at products which could be actually scaled up for impact. So, and then finally, because we have a large public health footprint within the country, within the region, within the world, we are able to actually help scale up and apply some of these diagnostic products across the world. Now I'm going to come to some specific examples, because theory is great, but how are we going to actually use some of this theory for real impact? And one of these is TrueNat. TrueNat is a portable package with a micro PCR analyzer, and the need is absolutely critical because it addresses the delay in diagnosis of TB. So as you probably know that in India, the TB burden is pretty high. We're actually considered the TB capital of the world. And there is a lot of antibiotic resistance, rifampicin resistance, because most people who start on rifampicin do not complete the course. So there was a huge need to actually look at early diagnosis of TB and also look at what is the resistance level. So PATH actually worked with this company called TrueNat. We wanted to, there were machines available at a district level, and we wanted to test this out in a sub-district, because the closer you get to the population, the better the diagnosis is going to be. Ideally, we're as a country, we are moving towards self-care, and self-care means self-test. And we saw again in COVID that whole paradigm shifted from going to a lab to actually buying those tests online and actually using them at home. So that's the direction that we're going. But with TrueNat, what we were trying to test was, can this be put at a block level? For some of you who may not know, there are over 700 districts in India and about almost 5,000 blocks. So from 700 districts where there were machines, we said, okay, can we go to a block level and have a machine in every block and a cheaper machine, because there are economics involved. So we tested this out in Uttar Pradesh and saw some really good results. The machine worked well, the costs were low, And the government system actually accepted it and rolled it out across the country. I think where we also got lucky was that TrueNat is also able to detect COVID. So TrueNat also got repurposed for COVID. And so the rollout of these machines happened very quickly, both in India and across many low and middle income countries. I'll come to another interesting example, and that is the TrueHB hemometer. And I don't know if all of you are aware, but 50% of the population of India is seen to have is seen to be suffering from anemia. And the challenge with the anemia is that most people just go undetected. So until you actually get sick and you go to a hospital and they test your blood, you don't really know. So one of the things that we are pushing hard for is anemia testing right at the primary health center. And that's the diagnosis of anemia. And if we're able to do that and take early intervention, we will definitely be able to tackle anemia. And huge challenge of scale here, because as I said, 50% of our population, which is about 700 million people. And it's not just limited to, I know a lot of us think that anemia is limited to women, but that's not true. There are men also. I mean, there's a large population of men who are also seem to be suffering from anemia. So we tested a point of care hemoglobin measurement tool, which can actually detect anemia right at the front line at the primary health center or the health and wellness center. It can also, and it's just like a pinprick of blood, very similar to a diabetes testing diagnostic that's available at home. And we tested it in the field setting. We looked at how the operations would work. Could the ASHA worker actually go home and do this? Or would it be something that the A&M does? So really looked at all the possible permutation combinations to see how this could be rolled out. And we actually, the impact is seen hugely. It's now getting rolled out across the country as we speak. And we are hoping that every primary health center will have one of these, every A&M will have one of these. It's still not ready for an ASHA worker to take home when she goes for a home thing, but hopefully we will get there at some point. One more that I'm personally very sort of interested in, because we keep talking about artificial intelligence and how that could change healthcare and how that could really have high impact. But I think really testing artificial intelligence on the ground, there needs to be a need for it. It can't be just because we want to use AI. We are going to use, we're going to create some solution. So one of the challenges or the gaps identified is, can we actually do population level screening for tuberculosis and other respiratory diseases through an X-ray, through a simple chest X-ray? So Cure.ai is an organization which has actually trained their algorithm to be able to reach a sensitivity and specificity of over 90%, where they are looking at digital X-rays and being able to actually predict for tuberculosis. And we tested this out. We found that it was very, very useful. It's being rolled out across India in many, many places across the country. We are helping to roll that out. But having said that, I think more importantly, how nice it would be if every chest X-ray that anybody takes across the country goes through this AI algorithm, and you are able to, you may go in for an X-ray for a certain reason, but you do also get screened for tuberculosis, also get screened for maybe lung cancer, and you are actually very early stages, you're able to tell whether you need a confirmatory diagnostic. Of course, most AI algorithms or AI solutions are seen as a screening tool, not as a diagnostic, not as a confirmatory diagnostic. So if the AI tells you, yes, you may have tuberculosis, then you're going for a complete diagnostic. But what you're able to do with something like this is really expand your population level screening and really try and look at well-being rather than post-disease healthcare. And I think that's where we need to go, really go into the preventive mode if we really want to make impact. So Path has been, scaling and testing innovations across COVID. I talked about a little bit, where we worked on not only just a product innovation, where we looked at many products which could help during the COVID crisis, but also the process innovation. We realized that there was a need for optimum utilization of resources. There was a need for lab automation. So sample tracking, I think during, when we go for a diagnosis, we feel, okay, I don't know if this is my report, has it got mixed up, have they followed the sample carefully? So we came up with digital sort of tracking systems for labs. We also did dual swab systems. So, looked at differential testing, demand side. So there was a lot of work that was done, and that really informed diagnostic for COVID. So COVID diagnostic, I don't know if some of you are aware, but just quickly to tell you, the self-test that we do, the government algorithm or the system algorithm is, if the self-test is negative, then you need to go in for a confirmatory diagnostic. If it is positive, then you don't need to go in for a confirmatory diagnostic. You go into hibernation, as I call it, or go into treatment. So that's the government algorithm. So some of you who got a negative test, I just want to let you know that the rule or the suggestion is that now you better go for a confirmatory diagnostic. But what it did was it really allowed us to do population level screening. Because at one point, I think some of you may have known that when COVID was at its peak, to get an RT-PCR report, to get an appointment took us a day or two, to get a report took us 4 to 5 days, whereas actually it shouldn't. So that is why the self-testing piece was introduced, so that the net could be wider and we could be able to, and that's actually been one of the successes of India, where we've managed to actually really expand our capacity and reach out to people so that they were able to test much faster. And I'm hoping that this would also now go into a complete shift in the way we think about diagnostics and the way we think about screening. And it is happening. I mean, recently we ran a huge trial for HIV self-testing. So there's a self-test kit for HIV. If you think that you may want to test yourself, you buy the kit from a supermarket, go home, test yourself, and then go into the system in case you find it to be positive for a confirmatory diagnostic, and then move forward. If it comes negative, of course, then you're fine. So that's how it's structured. So it's also about partnerships. So, we partner with most organizations around the country. We partner with a lot of, labs, a lot of government bodies, the ICMR, etc. So it can't be done by one organization. I also want to let you know that there is a lot of work that's currently happening on diagnostics in India, and of course across the world, but I'll focus on India. There is a huge amount of work that's happening. We have realized the importance of diagnostics after COVID, and there's this shift towards bringing better diagnostic, cheaper diagnostic right to your doorstep. And probably if it's coming through the public health system, then it's also free of cost. So there's a big push towards that. And that's going to be my next sort of topic of discussion, which is really enabling support for strengthening the diagnostics and surveillance landscape at the health system and policy level. And remember, we are a country of 1.4 billion people, so scale is absolutely critical. We cannot believe that just if some parts of our country are getting good diagnostic through the private sector, we are covered, because that's not true. We need to cover diagnostics and health for everybody. That's the whole thing about equity. So the government has started a very interesting program. It's called the Integrated Diagnostic Labs and Surveillance Program, and where they are looking at integrating labs with all diseases and free diagnostics. So the government has approved about $900 million to set up a network of labs, integrated public health laboratories. And when you say integrated, that means at the back end, the data is all integrated. And this is going to be at every district in India. So over 700 of those, and every block also, which is a new program. And as we speak, there are labs being set up across the country. The numbers that are coming up, I think in the next 5 years, we'll have about 9,000 public health laboratories. And when I say public health, these are free of cost with good quality diagnostics at the district and the block level. Plus some diagnosis which is happening at the health and wellness center or the primary healthcare center. This is going to be the cornerstone or the basic pillar of diagnosis of diseases in India. It's going to be at the base of really health equity and good healthcare across the country. So this is a dream. If this happens, I think we will definitely, in the next 5 years, be in a very, very different space. And Path has been working a lot on surveillance. So really, surveillance is all about bringing all the data together and say, okay, what are the hot spots? Where is there an outbreak? What are the diseases that are going up? What are the diseases that we are able to control? What's going on really? Because without knowing that, you can't actually respond. So we are helping to build some of this. I think also, as we speak about human health, what we found in COVID was it wasn't just about human health. I mean, I'm not sure whether COVID came from a bat or from a pangolin. I know we've all heard these theories, or from a lab in Wuhan. We've heard that one too. But if it was from a bat or a pangolin, and a lot of diseases come from animals, then the whole concept needs to move to One Health. And One Health is really looking at not just diagnosing humans, but actually looking at diseases coming out of animals, coming out of poultry, etc. So that's a large part of this whole surveillance network that's being set up. And it will look at poultry, it will look at all kinds of animals, wild animals, and keep ensuring that we are aware of the diseases that are coming and we have a clarity on where they're coming from and how we're going to manage them before they actually become a pandemic or an epidemic. So that's really the idea of this whole network. This is a Government of India program. It's called the Integrated Public Health Lab Program, and it's connected to the Health and Wellness Program, which is Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Centers. So if this dream comes true, in 5 years, every health and wellness center will have a certain amount of diagnostic. At the block level will be higher level, more diagnostic. And at the district, by the time you hit the district, you should have all your tests that you are required for. And only then you should move to a tertiary care facility. So you don't need to go to AIIMS in Delhi if you want to get a basic diagnostic for anything. It is coming closer to the public. That's the reason. So coming back to what would be the advantage of the integrated public health laboratory, detection of communicable and non-communicable diseases, because you'll have all the facilities, including microbiology, hematology, clinical biochemistry, cytology, clinical pathology, and molecular biology. So you're covering pretty much the entire gamut by the time you hit a district. You'll have timely data for analysis. So most of this equipment needs to be connected so that you get population level data for a district, for a block. You know exactly what problem is actually coming from, and you know it as it happens, because as the diagnosis happens, the data starts getting collected. There's lab-based surveillance for infectious and non-infectious disease, and I talked about outbreak already. And we're also looking at how these can actually integrate and carry out lab functions under various public health programs at a district level. So whether it is the HIV program, how does that get connected? Whether it is the vector-borne disease control program, how does that connect it? And if you've got some idea of the public health programs of India, it's a massive sort of, every division does its own thing. There is a TB team doing their own thing. There is an HIV team doing their own thing with the state AIDS control societies and so on and so forth. So how does this all integrate and we get information as a whole? It's also going to act as a hub to support block labs and finally conduct training and provide capacity building for the entire population of that district or the block. This is how it looks. And as I mentioned earlier, so if you look at this, very interesting, you will see that this is not limited to humans. It is about the environment. It is about food. It is about vector, which is the mosquitoes and sandflies, etc. And it is about livestock. And then you move to the primary health center or the health and wellness center, to the block public health unit, to the district, and then moving on to, and this is all going to be free for the citizen, which is the only way we are going to get to universal health coverage. What is it going to do? It's going to strengthen the ecosystem, of course. It is going to actually look at the optimal functionality of the entire value chain of diagnostics, because multiple departments are doing their own diagnosis, some sketchy, some strong. This is going to bring it all together. It'll become also very clear as to what's working, what's not working. It's going to enhance the system preparedness and response in terms of diseases, in terms of pandemics, epidemics, emergencies. So you'll have data right up front. You'll be able to bring in a lot of innovation and technology. And I started with that we will have to keep innovating. We will have to get faster. We'll have to get better. We'll have to get cheaper. And we'll have to be able to really start detecting quickly. I don't know if some of you are aware, but for cancer specifically, if you're able to diagnose cancer in the first, in the first stage, only less than 25% of the people actually are looking at possible death. And if you go further on, you kind of lose your chances. So it goes to 75–80% of the people not surviving if you detect late. So if you're able to diagnose early, it's really going to be very useful in terms of saving a lot of lives. So technology is going to be important. AMR, I talked about antimicrobial resistance. That's a big problem at the moment. And also, if you want to do the One Health approach, we will have to go across multiple sectors. Livestock is managed in a separate division. Food, there are food technology labs, etc., which go separately. The environment itself. So all of that will need to actually come together for this to happen. So that's the end of my conversation. Sorry about this big monologue, but I think I just wanted to give you a glimpse in the 45 minutes of what's happening, what we're doing, and what's happening in innovation. And now I'll hand over back to Priya. Priya, thanks a lot. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll try to answer some of those questions, but back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. That was very informative. I have a lot of questions myself, but then I think I will first start with questions in the chat box. We have a question from Bhumika, who says that they are working on a test for a specific point-of-care device for rural areas of Gujarat and Maharashtra. And their observation is that there is a huge gap in users being able to use point-of-care devices themselves. That means I'm assuming as self-tests. Her question is, how can we tackle this problem at scale?
So what is the specific device that they're developing? Have they talked about that?
No, Bhumika, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, Bhumika, I'd love to hear from you.
Bhumika, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. So the device we were trying to test is a thyroid testing device. It's similar to what a preg kit does.
Yeah, so it's got a great possibility, Bhumika. I don't think I think at the moment, unfortunately, the government is pretty 3 years ago, if you would have talked to me, I would have said don't waste your time because we're far away. But COVID has accelerated that. We're moving into self-testing very quickly. HIV self-testing, we're hoping to get it introduced into the system in the next 3 to 4 months. HCV testing, again, we're looking at self-testing there, and that's going very fast. So yes, absolutely. And thyroid, as we know, is a huge challenge. So, I would say you're in there, you're fine. And I would be happy to, provide any kind of support offline. So please feel free to sort of reach out, and I'll introduce you to our team. And you could have more of a discussion around this.
We have a question from Monica as to how does PATH come across innovations? Do innovators approach you directly, or does government organizations ask you to validate them?
So it's a combination of many things. Innovators, of course. So PATH, by the way, was set up as Program for Appropriate Technologies in Health 45 years ago in Seattle. So this is what we are known for. So a lot of innovators actually contact us directly. We also have the government calling us many a time to get an input on various technologies that they're looking at, because we come in with a non-conflictive view. And a lot of people actually hate us for that, especially the innovators, because we're able to say, you know what, this is not going to work in the system. So we have that. We also have actually a lot of global innovations which are designed for LMICs. So out of a lot of the universities, you know, we work with Harvard, we work with Stanford, MIT, etc. A lot of them come from there in India, IITs, you know, AIMS. So all over the place. And we look at innovations, we're able to, if you want a frank opinion, call us. But if you want to be told that you're very good, then maybe PATH is not the right organization, because we look at it from a health impact perspective. We look at it from a scalability perspective. We look at it from a health economics perspective, the market dynamics, who's the competition, what problem are you trying to solve? And we'll be able to give you a very, very straightforward feedback.
We have a question from Rashmi Singh. Has disease surveillance being done at PATH helped in early warning signaling of any certain disease?
We are currently working on vector-borne diseases. So we're looking at really, you know, vector-borne diseases is a very interesting space, because it's, you got to layer climate on it. You've got to layer, you know, information. So we've got a program where we are looking at just a Google search of the entire country, district by district, and saying, okay, what are you hearing from the news articles? But if you start layering all of this on top of each other, and then you have artificial intelligence actually weeding through it, is where we want to go. Have we achieved it yet? No. We are very keen, and we are working on specifically the vector-borne diseases at this point. I know there's another group working on tuberculosis, and we've been providing advice to them.
We have a question from Arthi Raghavan. How is health data sharing enabling innovations in the diagnostic space? Are there any challenges in data collection from public health and private health organizations? And what are the central and state level challenges in these processes?
So Arthi, data has become a nightmare. Governments don't want to share data at all. Even, you know, during the COVID pandemic, genomic sequencing data was not shared openly. I think IGIB was the only one who did actually share some of their data. So I'm hoping that the new data protection rules that are going to come out are going to open that up a little bit, because public health is really clamped up about it. Private healthcare providers don't provide any data either, because they're not sitting on any platform. But with Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, the government is trying to build one platform where all data sits, and then they anonymize it, and they're able to give it to researchers to be able to use it. And that's the ideal situation. If you have that data, you can actually decide on what are the diagnostics you want to build, or what are the devices, etc. So no, I don't want to sound complainy, but really we have a long way to go. We really hope. I mean, Cure.ai, for example, has built their algorithm on some I think it's 3,000 or 4,000, 300,000 or 400,000 X-rays over time. It's impossible to get those anymore. You know, so without that, how do you build an algorithm? How do you train your algorithm? So I think data is a challenge.
So I have a few questions. I think we do have many early stage startups, I think, attending this this session. And also in personal experience in working with startups is that for those developing point of care devices, if you're starting from the R&D stage, how do you incorporate technicalities of scale at that stage before you actually develop something and reach to a point to realize that this is not amenable to scale? And what would be those things that they should consider?
So, you know, this is a very important question. And I think I would have met already, I've been in PATH for 6 years, and I think I've met about maybe 400 innovators. And unfortunately, when they start up, they are able to raise quick funding to build something quickly. And because they get that early funding, they're not actually going into the details or the depth of the gap analysis and all of that. It is absolutely critical for you to actually go out there, talk to people, understand the challenge, look at what is the need, look at who the competition is, and the competition may not be in exactly the same product, but it's a competition is a solution, right? If you want to do, for example, screening for cervical cancer, there are multiple different types of solutions. They're all your competition. So if you're trying to build a device, and there is a device now that's built on AI-based screening for cervical cancer, but you need to be able to actually have that information to be able to see that before you go ahead. So my recommendation is talk to us. And we don't charge you for this service, right? We provide inputs free. BIRAC provides input free. CCAM provides inputs free. KIIT, and I'm sure you guys, Priya, would be also providing that, whatever information or connects or networking is concerned. Get in there. Try to understand the problem. Also try to understand the economics. So a lot of times, people, I've seen innovators go in and build a product. They know what the cost will probably be, but they kind of come in with this whole total cost of ownership approach. But when they actually go into the market, they realize that government's not going to buy on a TCO approach. They want to know how much money it's going to cost them today. So I think those are the things that are extremely important. And I think that market dynamic, they are completely missing. So I've had an innovator who actually sat down with me and he said, you know what, first I got money from BIRAC, then I got money from Wellcome, then I got money from Gates, Grand Challenge, blah, 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 blah. And for the last 6-7 years, I've been working on this. And now I come and talk to you and you say, hey, your product's not going anywhere. What am I supposed to do? And I said, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to tell you the truth. And he said, yeah, I know it's the truth. But these guys have just been funding me and I haven't actually done that kind of research. So I think do a little bit more research when you get your first funding round and get a little bit more in the depth.
You also spoke about economics of it. So if I may ask about what is a lucrative or a tried and tested business model for point of care diagnostics, if it really has to do this kind of reach that you're talking about? We hear that government is a primary customer. That means government is paying for this solution. Absolutely. In which case, working with governments at that scale to be able to recover your money and to be able to run your company by developing these kinds of solutions, is government the only way to do this, or what are there other business models that exist?
So, a lot of people ask me the question. Unfortunately, you can say I'm biased, Priya, because I work mostly with the government. But having said that, all the innovators that I've met who are not working with the government, only with the private sector, are struggling. Distribution channels, how do you build those? And especially if you're a one product company, which most of them are, how do you build a distribution channel across India? How do you get to that retailer? What kind of margins are you paying to the distributor, the retailer? How are you and how are you doing marketing? How are you getting the pull from the customer? So it's a huge nightmare. So my suggestion to innovators who are looking at public health from a health equity perspective, if you're doing a high class, expensive product, which will go out there, it's fine. But otherwise, I would strongly, the COVID, self-care kit that MyLab, developed. And I know Hasmukh from MyLab very, very well. I was chatting with him and he said, yeah, most of our market was actually government. They were buying the large bulk of it. Of course, he became very rich in the process. He won't like me saying that, but so public market is huge. It also gives you a lot of clarity of where you stand in terms of low income settings. It kind of tells you if you want to be in the low income setting, public health will give you that idea. If you got a product which is not really necessarily for the low income settings, then then the private market, otherwise not.
And my last question is, you spoke about point of care devices, where self-testing is going to happen in a big way now. And of course, point of care where maybe it happens at a rural setting or a PHC setting. We also realize that data, when I say that if it's a point of care and, when you take a test, you come to know the outcome of the test and maybe the person looking at it. But that data, does that data get recorded anywhere? And is there a provision now, knowing that data is going to be of great value and also integrated with how we design tests going forward? Is there a way to collect data from point of care tests and self-tests?
There's always a way to collect data, Priya, but it's very expensive. So, I don't know if you guys did the COVID self-test. It had instructions inside saying, go to this site, go to this Arogya Setu, put in this number. Did you ever do that? Because I didn't.
No, I think you stop at a point because you're interested in taking the test and not necessarily entering the
I
data.
thought I'd go into Arogya Setu and start filling in all this data, right? I tested myself. I threw the test away. I said, okay, I'm fine. Let's get on with life. So it's self-testing data, but you can do a, you can put a device inside, you can put a SIM card inside every self-test, but the cost is just prohibitive. So I think the thinking is that when you are doing a self-test at home, that's fine. That data can be lost. But if you are positive, you will get into a facility for diagnostic. And that's when your data starts getting captured. And do I really want to know who all did the self-test? So we ran a trial on HIV self-testing with 92,000 people across the country. Okay, so huge trial, just finished about 2 months ago. And we found the government's worry was that people will self-test and not come to the, the HIV, the centers, ART centers. So we did that trial. 92% of them who found themselves to be positive did come. Okay, so there was only 8% loss of follow-up, as we call it, which is not bad. Huh? So if 92% are actually coming into the system, those people get logged in.
Yeah.
But a lot of those would have actually never done a test by going to a center, but they were happy to do it by buying a self-kit and doing it at home. And especially high-risk populations, drug users or, similar such categories, they need to test regularly.
Yeah.
So I think we are going to do self-testing. I don't think data is going to come from the self-test itself. But if they do find themselves to be positive and they come into the system, and that's the data we want.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any more questions from the audience?
You can also give comments. I mean, you may not have liked something I said, so please go ahead. I'm very happy to hear that too. Don't limit yourself to questions.
All right, so if there are no more questions and comments, thank you very much, Mr. Jha. We do have a question.
Okay, great.
It says from Arun, which says, as central molecular lab facilities started in each district to diagnose COVID-19 through RT-PCR as an open channel, is PATH working to provide affordable tests on this platform or for other diseases like hepatitis, TB, HIV, dengue?
Arun, you're absolutely bang on. We have built so much RT-PCR capacity in this country that most RT-PCR testing capacity currently is lying unused. Most of those labs are crying. Whoever set up these machines, etc., are all crying because they just don't have the business. And they're selling a test for $300 and still they don't have people coming. So yes, we are looking at repurposing the RT-PCR facilities. We are looking at repurposing the molecular diagnostics like TrueNat, like Gene Expert. We are also looking, even the genome sequencing machines. I don't know if you're aware, but during COVID, I think we set up India set up some 100 new machines across the country. Okay, there was sequencing happening everywhere because people were worried of the next variant. So a lot of that equipment came in. We are looking at all of this equipment and how it's going to be repurposed. We're working very closely with CCamp out of Bangalore. And they're really working with us in terms of how are we going to repurpose this for other diseases, for newer diseases, how are we going to repurpose some of this stuff. So yes, absolutely. It's completely critical because otherwise most of this equipment is going to go into the dustbin eventually.
I think Neeti's question probably was already answered, which is how people did do self-testing during COVID, and they don't report. So how do we control that when especially they're hiding their condition just to escape staying from a hospital or making the situation worse?
Neeti, it's absolutely fine. Do a self-test. You don't want to report. It's your call. I mean, look at the pregnancy test. People buy the test, they go home, they test. Why do you need that report? I don't understand. We need to be also careful about what is the data that we need, which is going to help us in public health, and what is the data we are collecting just for the sake of it. So if you go into the health MIS, you'll find a lot of data which is of no use. If you go and see the ASHA and the ANM's register, you'll find a lot of information they're collecting which is of no value whatsoever. Let's not collect data for the sake of collecting data. Let's collect data which is going to actually inform public health. And you will have data from commercial sources in terms of how many tests were sold. So that data is available, right? But you don't know what was the outcome. And we presume and we believe that if you are positive, you will come to a health center, whether public or private, And that's when you get into the system.
Also, what is Path's take on AMR and what is being done in this sphere?
So AMR is a huge challenge in India. I think all of us know, and I remember having a lot of fights with my mother because she used to start herself on antibiotic every time she got a bad tummy, or a little bit of fever, and I constantly was fighting on it. We have to do something. It's an emergency. It is going to be the next big thing, and a lot of conversations are happening on this, Monica. Unfortunately, not as much action. In fact, just before this meeting, I was at an AMR meeting where we were talking about better diagnostic. That's one. Better communication, behavior change. Behavior hasn't changed. I see people in my generation taking antibiotics. Take it for 2 days, and then they say, "Okay, I'm feeling fine now. Let's forget it." So it's a big challenge. I have to keep telling my friends, don't do that. You should do that too. But yes, so Path is looking at essentially on diagnostic around AMR. That's our strength, not on the communication and behavior side, but there are the other people who are doing work on that. Wow, this group is just rocking now.
All right, so we have a question from Shailesh. There are a lot of ethical clearance regarding diagnostic scale-up. How is Path managed the entire disease and diagnostic level for clearances?
So diagnostic ethical clearances, if it's an intrusive diagnostic, then of course it's very critical and it's a bit long. Having said that, during COVID, all the regulatory has actually been crunched. So this is the right time. If you want to do a diagnostic, this is the time, because the government is saying, let's do it. But if you've got an intrusive diagnostic, that becomes a challenge. So, that becomes a little bit more difficult. However, we found that if you repurpose or rename and you talk of your device as a screening diagnostic, a screening product, not a diagnostic, not a confirmatory diagnostic, but so Cure.ai had that challenge. And they were pushing the diagnostic conversation. When we did the trial, we came back and we gave them this advice. You are a clinical decision support algorithm. You are a screening diagnostic. Position it like that and you'll move fast, because the cost of one AI, one X-ray is, I think, less than 10 rupees, 5-6 rupees. So just use it as a screening tool and it'll work. And that's what happened with them. So they thank us. They didn't give us any money for that, but they thank us for that information. Yeah.
And I think our last question is, do you think we should integrate alternate medicine with allopathy? Could that be a solution for AMR?
I don't know anything about alternate medicine. I know that I use it. I use homeopathy, I use Ayurvedic, but I don't know how all of this comes together. I must say that the government is looking at it very carefully. There are people who are doing some trials. ICMR is starting a separate division to do that. But I would not be the right person to answer that question. I believe in it, is all I can say, despite the fact that I work in public health and I work for Path, etc. But I do believe in it. We've got a homeopath, we've got Ayurvedic medicines that we use, but I can't answer that question on AMR. Sorry.
All right. I think my team reminds me that we need a group photo. So I request everyone to switch on your cameras before we close for the day. Sheetal, can you see all of us on a screen, or can you see only Dr. Jain, Mr. Jain on the screen?
Yeah, I can see all of them.
All of you? Okay, all right.
Sheetal, are you going to say cheese or we're done?
Yeah, we're done.
We're done.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jain. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in person the next time I'm in Pune.
Yes. All right.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a good day.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.